All right. So basically, after crunching the numbers from last week's action, resulted that Ohio State is number one. Now they did slip a little bit in some of these categories, which is to be expected after playing a team like Oregon on the road, but they already ranked really, really high in just about every category. Now there are a few weak spots, relatively speaking, to the rest of their numbers. Net completion percentage 28th, net tackles for loss 26th, but because their strength of schedule went up so dramatically from, I want to say, in the hundreds to 33rd, that is now why you see Ohio State as the number one team in the country. Now, if we take strength of schedule out of the equation, Texas is going to be the number one ranked team in the country. Ohio State will fall down to two. Um, Texas is just elite in everything. However, Texas ranked really highly in strength of schedule early in the season because they played Michigan in week 2 on the road. But, Michigan was a top 10 team at that point. And now, they're not. So, actually, let's see where Michigan is ranked here. They're ranked 24th now. So, kind of one of those things where Texas is considered that they haven't really been tested all that well. Um, but if we take strength of schedule out of the equation, Texas is ranked number one. Ole Miss is still ranked really, really highly in a lot of different categories here. Statistically, a very, very good team. The only problem is that they've lost twice. So, LSU's kind of coming along here. And then, after that early season loss to USC. But we've got a lot of good matchups today. And so let's get over to the matchups. So we're going to be talking about 4 games in particular, and we're going to start with the early game here, Indiana versus Nebraska. So Nebraska will be traveling to Indiana, and Indiana is 6-0 for the first time since, I want to say, 1967. So Indiana's really, really major turnaround job. They went 3-9 last year. Kurt Signetti, the coach formerly at James Madison, who oversaw their move to the FBS level. I mean, clearly the guy's a winner, and clearly, he's got them in a really good place. And the numbers back up Indiana being a good team. They're ranked 22nd in the AP poll, and they're legit statistically. I mean, I've got them at number 10 in my power ratings here. They rank 4th in net points per play, 4th in net yards per play. They're not really bad at it. I mean, they profile out as a really elite team here. Again, if we remove the strength of schedule aspect from the power ratings, Indiana moves all the way up to number 6. Or is that, yeah, 6. No, 7, sorry. So Indiana moves up. They're the 7th best team statistically. And honestly, if we remove talent from the equation, if we removed your overall starting roster talent, they move up to number 3. But all that stuff is very important. And it's how we kind of temper the numbers by having anchors like strength of schedule and composite talent. So Indiana is currently favored by 6.5. I actually have them in the power ratings favored by 16 at home. I give 7 points for being at home. I'm a really big believer in home field advantage in college football is worth more than 3.5 points. I think it's worth 7 in some places. Oregon, Nebraska, Penn State, LSU, big time environment, Florida. It's worth even more than 7. So I have Indiana is a 16-point favorite here. Kind of dive a little bit into the numbers. So In passing efficiency, Indiana's third best in the country. Nebraska's pretty good at defending the pass at 15th in the country in yards per attempt allowed, and they've played Colorado, so they've kind of been tested. So that's probably a legit pass defense there. Nebraska is also really tough against the run. Indiana's okay running the ball, but they're over 5 yards a carry, so that's good, but it's not elite. Defensively, Indiana's 8th in pass yards per attempt allowed and 12th in rush, so they're really solid against the run. Nebraska doesn't do anything offensively at an elite level. 40th in pass yards per attempt, which is good, but not great. But only 90th in rushing yards per attempt. So the real question here is, statistically, Indiana profiles out as a really excellent team, but they haven't been tested. Again, if we go back over to the power ratings, Indiana 113th in strength of schedule. So they are really kind of the outlier here. Kind of Texas as well, but then again, Texas is going to play Georgia today. So Indiana's really not been tested at all by any sort of tough competition. So I think the best team they've played so far is Maryland. So that's really the question here. Is Indiana legit? We're going to find out today. Nebraska's a really solid team. I have them as the 17th best team in the country. So this is where we find out how good Indiana is. They've kind of struggled putting teams away. And, they kind of got into a little bit of a shootout against Maryland. Couldn't really put Northwestern away either on the road. They kind of let these opponents hang around into the fourth quarter in the games that I've seen of Indiana. So it's tough for me to trust them with that 6.5 in really their first true test. But, they're going to be playing at home. Cignetti's a veteran coach. He knows how to win. He's a winner. So I think I'm going to actually take Indiana to cover that 6.5 points. Again, I don't know how much I trust them. But I think, my gut is telling me that Indiana might be for real this year. Just because they profile out as an excellent team statistically. So I'm going to take Indiana to cover it. I know I have it in bold. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between that and that. But I have Indiana in bold, so I'm picking them to cover the 6.5 at home. Let's move on to the next game, Tennessee, Alabama. Now, in the power ratings, Alabama is 6th and Tennessee is 7th. They're about dead even. Alabama's at a 116. Tennessee's at 115.7 basically. So at a neutral site, this game would be a pick 'em, at least if I was setting the odds. Both teams have losses. Alabama's lost to Vanderbilt. They were very fortunate to beat South Carolina last week. Tennessee has lost to Arkansas on the road. They were also very fortunate to beat Florida last week. And I know coming into the season, just because a little sidebar, Florida was considered to be, Billy Napier is definitely losing his job. Florida's actually not that bad. I have them as the 29th best team in the country. Yes, they're 3-3, but I think they've actually kind of been a little better than people expected, which that's got to be to be expected when people are so down on a team with talent like Florida. I mean, you're talking about a team with the 15th best roster in the country, but anyway, I digress. Tennessee escapes against Florida. I wanted to pick Florida against Tennessee. I didn't include them in my predictions video for last week, but I always pick Florida against Tennessee because it seems like they always beat Tennessee. They just always have Tennessee's number no matter what. But anyways, Florida or Tennessee and Alabama, third Saturday in October. Game is being played in Knoxville Alabama is a 3-point favorite per Vegas. I have Tennessee is about a 7-point favorite, 6.5, 7-point favorite. So my power ratings would tell you to take Tennessee and the points, which is what I'm going to recommend. I don't think Bama's defense, I mean, unless it got fixed, they've got some issues on defense. Statistically, let's find. I mean, really like to look for the mismatches. Not really a mismatch anywhere to be found. I mean, Tennessee's 28th in passing efficiency. Alabama's 17th in pass defense efficiency. Tennessee's 25th in rushing efficiency. Alabama's 29th against the run. There may be some, inefficient. There may be some mismatches here when Tennessee is on defense. Alabama is really efficient throwing the ball. Tennessee's just kind of decent, not great in yards per attempt allowed. So Alabama may be able to throw the ball on them. Rushing yards per carry allowed. Tennessee's a lead against the run. Bama doesn't really run the ball too well. So I think Tennessee perhaps has the ability to make Alabama one-dimensional here. The issue, is, at least in my head, is that I wonder if... I mean, Tennessee's a lot more of a defensive team than we thought coming. I mean, we think, last time Tennessee was really in the true national spotlight was 2022, and that was the Hendon Hooker year, the Jalen Hyatt year. Remember, they had that big classic game in Neyland against Alabama where they beat Alabama for the first time in basically, I think, 15 years. Tore down the goalpost. It was this big epic game, 52-49. Goes back and forth. Unforgettable game. And that year, Tennessee was just really all offense, no defense. And this year, they may be better defensively than they are offensively. They're still pretty good offensively, but, you saw Arkansas hold them to 14. Arkansas is a good team, and, Arkansas really kind of shut them down offensively, really, or at least frustrated them to a major extent. So my question is, could they get into a shootout with a team like Alabama? But I also wonder about Alabama defensively. They let Georgia come all the way back. They were up 28-zip, let Georgia come all the way back, and even retake the lead very late in that game. Let up 40 points to Vanderbilt. Obviously, 7 of that was from a pick six. But still, 33 points to Vanderbilt. I mean, you let up more points to Vanderbilt than you have in over 100 years. Bama's the numbers Vanderbilt put up against Bama's defense, if you look at the box score, weren't super dominant. It's not like they just tore Alabama's defense to shreds. But then again, at the end of the game, you look up, they got 40 points. If you actually watch that game, Diego Pavia, it looked like there were times where Vandy was kind of out scheming Alabama. So I don't really trust Bama's defense. And as for Tennessee, I strangely don't really trust their offense a whole lot. Again, low-scoring games past few weeks. I will take Tennessee and the points here, but I don't feel super confident in it. I just don't know if I trust that Alabama's defense is fixed. The thing is, it's hard to fix a defense in a week, but when you have the talent that Alabama has, again, number one roster in the country still, even with Saban gone, something like that might be able to be fixed in a week because you have such great players. It could just be a scheme thing. It's tough for me to... I don't know. My gut is telling me Alabama, but I'm going to go with the spreadsheet. I'm going to go with the numbers here. And I'm going to choose Tennessee. I think they may be able to just get kind of carried over the top with the home field advantage. So I'm going to pick Tennessee. Not a ton of confidence in it. Again, these teams are about dead even, and Tennessee's just playing at home. So I'm going to go with them and take the points. So let's move on to the next game here, which is Michigan at Illinois. Michigan's a 3-point favorite on the road. My power ratings have Illinois as about a 4.5-point favorite at home. Power ratings like all the home teams to cover here. These teams are also very evenly matched here. I've got Michigan as the 42nd best team and Illinois as the 44th best team, so they're pretty close to one another. In terms of the numbers, neither team is really elite in any category, but at least in the net categories. But Michigan probably profiles out as a stronger team. Illinois is actually pretty good at throwing the ball, 24th in passing efficiency. Michigan's got a pretty good pass defense, although their other corner opposite Will Johnson tends to get picked on basically by whoever they play. Every team that plays Michigan, they kind of avoid Will Johnson, and they throw at the other guy. His name is escaping me. I think his name is Preston Hill. I just know he's number 20. A lot of people have kind of been picking on him. So maybe Illinois will be able to pass on them. Illinois is really not that great at running the ball. Michigan's super strong against the run. So Michigan probably has the ability to kind of make to make Illinois one-dimensional. So that's an issue that I don't really like for Illinois. Again, when I pick these games, I look for these big mismatches. Michigan 8th in the country in stopping the run. Illinois 89th in rushing efficiency. I look for those big lopsided mismatches there, and that's really heavily in Michigan's favor in terms of making Illinois one-dimensional. When Michigan's got the ball, obviously horrible at throwing the ball, basically dead last in the country in passing efficiency. Illinois is pretty solid against the pass, not great, not bad, not great, slightly above average, I guess I'd say. But here's another area where I'm really concerned for Illinois is stopping the run. They are 96th in yards per carry allowed. And Michigan's 45th in rushing yards per carry. But again, we know how Michigan likes to run the ball. They're not going to actually be running for 5 yards a carry. Typically, they're going to kind of be going 1, 2, 3 yards a carry. And then, after 10 carries or so, they're just going to break free. Edwards or Mullings is going to find a hole and take it to the house. And that's really how their run game works. It's not pretty until they bust off a big one. So I just think, if you want to beat Michigan, you got to be good against the run. And you got to have athletes on the outside to kind of overwhelm them. Illinois may be able to throw the ball, but I just don't really trust them in stopping the run here. So I am going to take Michigan to cover the 3. I feel like it'll probably be a closer kind of game. But 3 points, it feels like enough. Enough of a small enough number, I guess I should say, for me to be comfortable taking Michigan, although they are on the road, which is kind of tough there. And pretty much every game for Michigan, other than the Texas game and the one of their other non-conference games. Actually, no, they were pretty close against Arkansas State. Arkansas State played them pretty tough, and so did Fresno State. And that's the kind of stuff that gives me. I mean, really, most of Michigan games have been 4-quarter games, other than the Texas game, which really got away. I mean, they all the USC game could have gone either way. Washington kind of pulled away from them late, do those late turnovers. Um, and that was Michigan's first real road test. They only scored 17 points. They moved to Jack Tuttle, who I thought looked pretty good at first, and then he started turning the ball over late in the game and really just gave that game away to Washington when it was still hanging in the balance. Um, I've been saying it for a while. I think you need to come out in a bear front against Michigan and just beg them to beat you throwing the ball, and just bet that they can't do it. But part of me kind of feels like the numbers are lying. We kind of went over, the rushing thing. If you prevent Michigan from breaking off multiple big runs, they are going to really, really struggle to run the ball. And I'm sure Illinois is just going to sell out completely against the run. So it's tough. It's tough for me to pick this game. It's going to be a low scoring game, I would guess. I'm thinking like a 24-17 Michigan win or something like that. So I am going to actually go against my power ratings and take Michigan to cover the 3. Although they haven't really been super trustworthy when it comes to covering spreads this season. So not a high degree of confidence in that one either, like the Tennessee game. But I will still take Michigan to cover the spread. Again, I don't like this number right here. I don't like Illinois being 96th against the run. And I don't like them being 89th in terms of rushing the ball. And Michigan really, so I think Michigan may be able to make them one-dimensional offensively, and they may have a good degree of success running the ball on Illinois. So that to me is if Michigan can run on you, you're in trouble. So that's my rationale here. But again, my power ratings think in Illinois is a 4.5, basically a 4.5 point favorite at home. So then for the big marquee matchup of the weekend, we have Georgia visiting Texas. Texas is a 5-point favorite. Georgia has not been great this year. Something, I don't know. Maybe all the DUIs and all the arrests and all that stuff and players getting dismissed from the team, maybe starting to take a toll. Maybe, culture is kind of eroding. Georgia is starting to, I don't know. Georgia feels like Miami from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Like tons of talent, winning championships, but at what cost? Where's the culture? Lots of guys getting in trouble with the law. So statistically, Texas is elite. Georgia is really good as well, but my power ratings like Texas as a 14.5 point favorite at home. And again, a lot of that is taking home field advantage into the equation here. Georgia's had a brutally difficult schedule already and doesn't get any easier today. Going on the road to Alabama, going on the road to Texas, I mean, just really, really tough. The issue is that this is really a must-win game for Georgia. I mean, they still have to play Ole Miss. They still have to play Tennessee. They've got a really, and I know they actually play one more tough team. I know they still play Florida, neutral site game. Again, they've got a really hard schedule, and they haven't really looked that great all season, Georgia. If we look at them here on the power ratings, they come in at number 8, but that's because they've got the 7th best strength of schedule. So if we remove strength of schedule from the equation here, which again, can't really do, but they do fall down a little bit here. I don't know what number that is, like 10 or 11 or something like that. I mean, 23rd in points per play, 23rd in yards per play, 43rd in net yards per carry. There's nothing that they really do at an elite level other than net explosive plays. But again, this is an ultra talented roster in Georgia. Texas has a ton of talent as well. The one area that I think Texas may be able to be had, at least from the Georgia perspective, Georgia's pretty good throwing the ball. 22nd in pass yards per attempt. And again, that's against the 7th hardest schedule in the country. Texas, on the other hand, is 82nd in strength of schedule. And more to the point, Texas has not really played anyone that could challenge them through the air. If I pull up Texas's schedule, they've played Colorado State, they've played Michigan, they've played UTSA, ULM, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is not a good offense. And obviously Texas has been dominant against all these teams, but they have not really played anybody that can throw. And Georgia is going to be by far the best passing attack that they face this season. Yes, Texas is number 1 against the pass, but Georgia can throw the ball, and Georgia's played against some tough teams, a much tougher schedule than Texas has. So I think even though Texas is really great against the pass, I look for Georgia to really try to test that secondary and see if it's legit. Because we just don't know. We just don't know. This is going to be the first real test for Texas's pass defense. Texas is really, really good against the run. Georgia just okay running the ball. Defensively, Georgia's not been super great against the pass, so I think this is kind of a mismatch here. Texas, number 9 in the country in passing efficiency. Georgia's 69. So Texas will probably be able to move the ball on them. 37th in rushing. Georgia's 45th. So that's something that's slightly in Texas's favor, although probably a wash there. But again, I know we look for the mismatches and we see Texas being number 1 in pass defense and Georgia being 22nd. So you would think slight edge to Texas there, but again, I think that's mostly a result of Texas not playing any team that is competent throwing the ball. So I think Georgia will try to throw on them, and I think they'll probably have some success. Just maybe just because it's such a shock to Texas to play against a quarterback like Carson Beck, and they've not faced anything even close to a quarterback like Carson Beck. So I'm looking at this game, and it's really hard for me to pick. Texas is, again, a 5-point favorite at home. My power ratings like them as about a 14.5-point home favorite. So I will go with Texas to win the game. I just think something's wrong with Georgia. They have never really been able to put it together this season. And Texas has, again, not a great schedule, but just they've been about as impressive as you want them to be. Going to be a tough game for Georgia. Night game down in Austin, and it's just hard for me to trust Georgia. I mean, I wanted to trust them against Alabama. I thought, hey, must-win game for Kirby Smart. I mean, technically not really a must-win game because they're still all their hopes and dreams are still in front of them. They could still make the playoff. They could still win the national championship. They could still win the SEC. They could still do all that stuff. But a loss today, really, you start to kind of recalibrate your expectations and start thinking about, can we get in as an at-large? Because with 2 conference losses versus Texas having 0, and then Alabama having 1, but Alabama or Tennessee, one of those 2 is going to get a conference loss here. But Texas going to be the first real big time SEC conference test here. And I think I'd like them to cover the 5. It's just a really tough one. Um, I'm gonna take them to cover the 5. I'm just gonna go with the power ratings here, and just from the gut feeling that something just seems off about Georgia. It just seems like they, I don't know, something's wrong down there, and I suspect it has a lot to do with all those players getting arrested and all that stuff. So I'm gonna take Texas to cover the 5. These games have been really hard to pick, but I'm gonna go with Texas. So I've got Texas covering the 5. I've got Michigan covering the 3 on the road. I've got Tennessee with the points. So Tennessee getting 3 points at home to Alabama. And I'm going to have Indiana covering the 6.5 at home against Nebraska, which that one I don't really feel good about any of these picks here. So if you want to just fade me and go with the power ratings, feel free. And that would be Indiana covering, Tennessee covering, Illinois covering and getting points, and then Texas covering. I did go with the power ratings in 3 out of the 4 games I have here, but again, I don't really feel super great about any of these picks, to be honest. This is really tough. It's starting to feel like, with these expanded conferences and the transfer portal and NIL, the new college football, it's really starting to feel very NFL-like, where anybody can beat anybody on any given week, at least in terms of the Power 4 conferences. So, a lot of these games are starting to feel like coin flips. That's kind of how the NFL is. I do an NFL pick show with my brother on his YouTube channel, C Frank Picks. The NFL is, a lot of those games are just come down to like one play. One team covers, the other team doesn't, or if it would have gone the other way, the other team. So a lot of these games in the NFL are on a knife's edge. And it's starting to kind of feel that way with college football, where it just feels like anybody can beat anybody now. A lot of parity in the sport. With the new 12-team format, a lot more teams alive for the playoff, and then a lot more margin of error for the better team. So maybe the urgency isn't really there. Maybe kind of brings the top down, the bottom brings the bottom up a little bit. So again, Indiana in the points. I'm going to take Indiana to cover 6.5. I'm going to take Tennessee +3. I'm going to take Michigan -3. And I'm going to take Texas -5. So those are the picks. This is going to be a great day of college football. So leave a like if you enjoyed the video, the analysis, the breakdowns. Subscribe if you want more of this, and enjoy this incredible day of college football. And we'll see you in the next one.